Imagine waking up one morning to find your bank account suddenly credited with $86,400 every single day. The only condition: whatever you don't use by midnight disappears. No savings, no rollover, no second chances. How would you spend it? Would you waste a penny knowing it would vanish forever? Now realize you already live with that account. Only instead of dollars, you are given seconds. 86,000, for 100 of them, renewed daily, yet most people treat them as if they were infinite. This is the silent absurdity of human life. We hoard possessions as though they will last forever, yet we squander time as though it were worthless. We plan, postpone, and procrastinate, waiting for the right moment, never realizing that the right moment has always been now. And that is why Seneca's insight hits like a thunderclap across the centuries. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. The Roman philosopher was not being poetic. He was diagnosing a disease, the illusion of abundance. We act as though time is a background feature, a neutral flow upon which life unfolds. But time is not a backdrop. It's the stage, the script, the actor, and the final curtain. When you lose money, you can earn it again. When you lose friends, you can meet new ones. But when you lose time, you lose everything that could have been. What's terrifying is not that we die, but that we often never truly live before we do. The tragedy of life is not its brevity. It's our blindness. We watch years pass in the same routines, promising that one day we'll start writing that book, change that job, call that person, heal that wound. But one day is a mirage that keeps receding, and every postponed dream becomes a tombstone marking where a possibility died. Pause for a moment and think. When was the last time you felt the pulse of time moving through you? Not as hours on a clock, but as life force, irretrievable and sacred. We often say, "I don't have time," but that phrase is deceitful. The truth is you are time, a self-aware flicker in an ocean of impermanence. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought is part of a cosmic countdown. And yet, the modern world conspires to make us forget. We trade moments for money, attention for distraction, and meaning for motion. We scroll endlessly, not because we are curious, but because stillness terrifies us. The silence between moments has become unbearable, so we drown it in noise. But if you were to stop, just for a minute, and listen deeply, you'd hear something most people never do. The sound of time slipping through your fingers. That sound is the whisper of mortality, urging you to wake up. Seneca's wisdom was not meant to depress, but to awaken, to make you see that every moment is a choice, to live consciously or mechanically, to create or to consume, to awaken or to drift. Once you truly grasp the value of time, life transforms from a blur into something radiantly alive. The ordinary becomes sacred. The fleeting becomes beautiful. You begin to live, not by the length of your days, but by their depth. Because when you measure life not by the number of breaths you take, but by the number of moments that take your breath away, you start to understand what Seneca was trying to tell us all along. That the purpose of time is not survival, it's meaning. And meaning begins the instant you stop treating time as a servant and start honoring it as your most precious teacher. There's a peculiar blindness that afflicts nearly every human being, a blindness so familiar we no longer notice it. We wake up, check the clock, rush to work, complain about how fast the week went, and then repeat the cycle. We talk about time management as though time were a tool, something outside us that can be organized, optimized, or controlled. But what if the real problem isn't how we manage time, but how we perceive it? Human beings are the only creatures aware of their mortality, yet we live as though we'll never die. This contradiction shapes everything about us. Psychologists call it temporal dissociation, the inability to emotionally connect with the reality of our own finitude. We know intellectually that life is short, but emotionally we live as if it were endless. That's why we delay, defer, and dream of later. Later becomes the psychological escape hatch that protects us from the unbearable truth that there might be no later. You've felt this before. That subtle denial whispering, "I have time," is the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves. We have calendars full of plans, phones buzzing with reminders, and yet our days vanish like mist. We do not waste time deliberately, we waste it unconsciously. Modern society amplifies this blindness. We live in an era obsessed with productivity, measured by tasks completed rather than moments experienced. We have apps to track our sleep, steps, habits, and minutes, yet few of us ever track the quality of our presence. What use is a perfectly scheduled life if your mind is never where your body is? We have become time's accountants, counting seconds while losing ourselves in the arithmetic. And underneath it all lies a deeper fear, the fear of stillness. Stillness forces us to confront how swiftly life moves, how fragile it all is. So we stay busy not because we love our busyness, but because it shields us from awareness. The noise, the scrolling, the multitasking, they are not signs of productivity. They are defenses against existential anxiety. We fear the mirror time holds up to us. The Stoics, and Seneca most of all, warned against this unconscious drift. But another thinker, Kierkegaard, exposed its emotional cost. The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all. And that is what time blindness truly is, not just losing hours, but losing yourself within them. The tragedy of unconscious living is that it feels normal. We mistake routine for safety, repetition for control. But time doesn't care about your schedule. It moves with or without your attention. You could live 40 years in automatic motion and never once taste the flavor of a single minute. Yet there is hope. The moment you begin to notice time, something profound happens. It starts to slow down. Awareness stretches it, deepens it, transforms it. A 5-minute conversation can become eternal if you are fully present. A single sunrise can contain more life than an entire decade lived in distraction. Grasping the value of time isn't about counting days. It's about inhabiting them. Each second is not just passing. It's offering itself to you. What you do with that offering defines the quality of your existence. The antidote to time blindness, then, is attention. True attention, the kind that anchors you in the raw immediacy of experience. When you give yourself completely to this moment, the tyranny of later loses its grip. The future shrinks, the past dissolves, and all that remains is the radiant pulse of now, the only place where life actually exists. And once you awaken to that truth, a new kind of question arises. Not, how much time do I have? But, how deeply am I willing to live with the time I've been given? There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you begin to notice the texture of time. It might happen as sunlight falls across a table, or when you hear laughter echo through an empty room. Suddenly, the moment feels heavier, denser, more alive. You are no longer drifting through time. Time is flowing through you. And in that instant, you understand something that no clock can measure. Awareness transforms duration into depth. This is the beginning of time's alchemy, the transformation of fleeting moments into eternal meaning. When you grasp the value of time, life doesn't simply feel longer. It feels fuller. The minutes no longer blur into each other like raindrops sliding down glass. They become distinct, luminous, irreplaceable. Most people believe meaning comes from grand achievements, career milestones, recognition, wealth. But meaning is not found in quantity of time or accomplishment. It emerges from quality of consciousness. A man who lives 50 years but truly experiences 10 of them has lived more fully than someone who drifts through a century untouched by awareness. The secret is presence. When you are fully present, every act becomes sacred. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on impermanence. Walking home at dusk becomes a communion with existence itself. Even pain, when faced with awareness, becomes profound rather than pointless. Awareness does not eliminate suffering. It illuminates it, revealing what it means to be alive at all. Think about it. Time only hurts when you're not present in it. We fear the passage of time because we feel disconnected from it, like watching a river from the shore instead of swimming within it. But once you immerse yourself in the current, the fear dissolves. You stop measuring life in years and begin measuring it in moments of meaning. This is not romantic idealism. It's existential realism. You will die. Everyone you love will die. Every possession you treasure will fade. But that is what gives each instant its extraordinary weight. The finite nature of time is not a curse. It's the source of its beauty. As the philosopher Martin Heidegger wrote, "If I take death into my life, acknowledge it, and face it squarely, I will free myself from the anxiety of death and the pettiness of life, and only then will I be free to become myself." When you accept time's limits, you no longer chase distractions. You start choosing experiences that align with your soul rather than your schedule. You begin to curate your moments, selecting what deserves your time with the same discernment you'd use to spend your last dollar. Because in truth, each day is your last in some small way. The version of you who wakes tomorrow will not be the same as the one reading this now. Awareness makes time personal, turns hours into art. When you give full attention to a moment, you preserve it not in memory but in being. Time, once seen as an enemy, becomes an ally. Instead of fighting it, you start dancing with it, moving in rhythm with its inevitable flow. In that dance, you find freedom. You stop fearing loss because you understand that nothing truly experienced is ever lost. The sunset fades, but the act of having witnessed it lives on as part of you. The conversation ends, but its echo reshapes your inner world. Every lived moment leaves a fingerprint on eternity. This is the paradox. When you stop trying to hold on to time, it begins to hold you. You no longer chase meaning, you inhabit it. Awareness becomes your philosopher's stone, turning every second into something precious and permanent in spirit, if not in form. And from this awakening, a new challenge arises. If time is sacred and awareness is the key, how then should we live? How do we act in a world that constantly tempts us to forget what matters most? Once you awaken to the truth that time is sacred, the next question cuts deep. What will you do with it? Awareness without action is like light trapped inside a jar. It illuminates nothing beyond itself. The moment you understand the value of time, life demands a response. You must choose how to live. Most people confuse motion with progress. They fill their schedules, chase endless goals, and mistake exhaustion for achievement. But when time becomes precious, the frantic noise of modern living begins to sound hollow. You start asking, why am I doing this? Is this how I want to spend what little remains of my life? It is in that questioning that purpose begins. For the Stoics, purpose was not an abstract idea. It was a daily practice of aligning one's actions with one's deepest values. They believed that every day should be lived as though it were your entire life compressed into 24 hours. Because, in truth, that's what it is. Each day is a miniature existence, complete, self-contained, and irretrievable once spent. Intentional living, then, is not about grand reinvention, it's about conscious alignment. You begin to measure your choices not by convenience or conformity, but by integrity. You stop asking, what do I have to do? And begin asking, what deserves my time? And here lies the quiet revolution Seneca envisioned. To grasp time's value is to understand that every wasted hour is an ethical decision, a surrender of potential meaning. Life is not merely something you endure, it's something you craft. Every decision becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of your finite days. But living deliberately is not easy. The world is full of distractions disguised as duties. Society rewards productivity, not presence. Achievement, not authenticity. You will be told that slowing down is laziness, that reflection is indulgence, that urgency is virtue. But that's a lie, a collective delusion born of fear. Because when people stop to think, they begin to see. And when they see, they begin to question. To live deliberately means refusing to let the world decide how you spend your soul. It means reclaiming ownership over your hours, your focus, and your inner rhythm. It means choosing the essential over the immediate and the meaningful over the convenient. The philosopher Henry David Thoreau captured this spirit when he wrote, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." To front only the essential facts of life is not merely poetic, it's revolutionary. It's an act of rebellion against the machinery of distraction. When you live intentionally, you become dangerous to the forces that profit from your forgetfulness. You are no longer a passive consumer of time, but its conscious co-creator. Living deliberately also reshapes your relationship with others. You begin to see that people, like moments, are impermanent. You listen more deeply, forgive more quickly, and love more fiercely because you understand that nothing is guaranteed, not even the next breath. Gratitude becomes your natural posture, not as a virtue to display but as an instinct of the awakened mind. In this light, morality is no longer a list of rules, it becomes the art of stewardship. You guard your time not out of selfishness, but out of reverence for life itself. You choose your commitments with care, knowing that to give your time is to give the one thing you can never retrieve. And when you begin to live like this with clarity, purpose, and awareness, you discover something extraordinary. Time no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes your ally, your companion, your measure of meaning. You stop running from it and start walking with it. Yet one final truth remains, one Seneca would whisper even now: to live deliberately is to live courageously. Because only those who understand time's value are brave enough to face its end. There comes a quiet moment in every awakened life when you stop asking for more time. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally learned to live within it. You stop grasping, stop running, and begin to see each instant for what it is: complete, sufficient, miraculous. When you grasp the value of time, you no longer beg the universe for extra years. You simply fill the ones you have with such intensity of presence that eternity itself feels near. This is the paradox of mortality. The more deeply you accept that you will die, the more vividly you begin to live. Death, stripped of fear, becomes not an end but a mirror, reflecting the urgency, fragility, and unspeakable beauty of existence. You no longer measure life by duration but by density, how deeply you've felt, how honestly you've lived, how courageously you've loved. Seneca wrote of this often, not with despair, but with liberation. To him, the awareness of death was not morbid. It was clarifying. When you remember you will die, trivial concerns evaporate. Envy fades. Petty ambitions lose their grip. You realize that the only true luxury is time well spent, and the only true poverty is time wasted in unconscious living. The person who lives fully today does not fear tomorrow. They know that meaning is not hidden in some distant future. It is woven into the choices of this moment. To live as though time were infinite is to live half asleep. To live with death in your awareness is to awaken completely. This awakening transforms even the smallest gesture. A simple act of kindness becomes eternal because it ripples through hearts you will never know. A moment of forgiveness outlives you because it frees more than just your own soul. You begin to see that while your time is finite, the consequences of how you spend it are not. This is how a mortal life becomes immortal, not through fame, monuments, or memory, but through presence. The way you speak, the way you listen, the way you touch the world in your brief passing. These are the echoes that remain. You may not control the length of your life, but you do control its texture. And that texture, once refined by awareness, becomes timeless. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius captured this freedom in one of his meditations. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. To live with that thought is not to be haunted by death. It is to be guided by it. When you understand that each day might be your last, you stop waiting for permission to live. You write the letter, make the call, take the risk. You begin to choose depth over comfort, truth over approval, love over fear. And in doing so, you transcend the ordinary boundaries of existence. You discover that time is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Every tick of the clock becomes a lesson in humility and gratitude. Every passing day, an invitation to embody what it means to be alive at all. The ancient Stoics did not promise immortality of the body, but they did promise something greater: immortality of intention. To live each day as if it were a lifetime is to live beyond time itself. Because the person who has lived one day fully, consciously, and without regret has already experienced eternity. So perhaps the meaning of life is not found in the endless pursuit of more, but in the rare courage to live enough. Enough to feel wonder, enough to forgive, enough to create, to love, to leave behind something that whispers, I was here, and I lived. When you grasp the value of time, life ceases to be a race against death. It becomes a dialogue with existence, an exchange of presence for purpose, awareness for peace. You realize that meaning was never waiting at the end of the road. It was always here, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this moment. And when that final second arrives, and it will, you will not beg for more time. You will smile knowing you used it well,